Thank you.
Great.
So I have hit that record button. So just wanted to give everybody heads up that this is being recorded. So if just to make sure that you're aware of that so that we can host it later for other people who weren't able to attend today to view it. So I'm going to jump in. It's 11:05, so I figured, well, let's get started. My name is Sarah Monzo, and I am the co-founder of Community for Affordable Housing, along with my friend here, Troy Thiel. I am also the marketing specialist for Caliber Home Loans. I'm out of Tacoma now. I used to be a Kirkland resident for many, many years and just recently relocated to Tacoma. So I want to thank you all for being here. This large attendance is really exciting, and it shows that there's a lot of interest in prefab, modular, and manufactured and alternative housing types. So that's encouraging for us. So thank you. So quick housekeeping items for today. Except for the presenter, we will all be on mute. So if you can please keep yourself muted, except for when you are speaking, that will just keep any interference down. And also, we do want to keep it really interactive. And if you have questions, we are encouraging that and encouraging discussion. There is a chat box. Please feel free to throw your questions in the chat box. We've set aside time at the end for a live Q&A. So either you can raise your hand or speak up and ask live at the end, or else I can read those questions out of the chat box. So either way, we really like to encourage open communication, open dialogue, and ask a lot of questions that we might have while we have this esteemed panel here. So first, I wanted to just give you guys a little background about Community for Affordable Housing. Troy Thiel and I actually started Community for Affordable Housing almost 3 years ago, I think it is now. We brought it together to bring awareness to the affordable housing crisis here in Washington State. Our mission is to advocate for all stakeholders groups to join together and to address this crisis. Our goal is to work together towards action steps that will improve housing options for all. Please find us on Facebook, like us. That's where you can stay up to date with events and information relevant to our respective industries, especially within the real estate mortgage umbrella. One of our top 3 strategies has been to address affordable and appropriate housing, along with upzoning and rezoning, entry-level condo development, is the ability to offer prefab, modular, and manufactured housing types more readily to our state, which brings us to why we're doing this event today. So I'd like to introduce my friend and co-founder of Community for Affordable Housing, Troy Thiel. He has, with 35 years of combined experience in real estate with his wife, Karen, and they make up the Thiel team at Keller Williams Eastside. Thank you, Troy, for introducing our outstanding panel of experts today, because I'm actually kind of in awe of who's here today, so thank you all for being here, but I will let you introduce and get this discussion started, so thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Sarah. And weren't you going to tell a personal story about this space?
I was. So I have a little personal story about manufactured housing and modular. So just a quick thing, my mom, when I was very young, she had to relocate to Washington State kind of in a quick fashion. We stayed with friends and family for a while, and then she was actually got a really great job opportunity out in Redmond when we were in Kent at the time. And the way that she could get her foot in the door to housing was to buy a manufactured home. So I grew up in a manufactured home for many years, and then when she finally remarried, they were able to that was kind of their gateway to buying up, right, and going up that housing ladder. So I'm a real strong believer that it's important and to offer different housing types for different people. And then the second part is I was actually supposed to go out to Yakima this week, but unfortunately they're having some crazy wildfires. But my aunt and uncle have been homeowners here in Kent for years and years and years, and they actually just purchased a beautiful modular home in a subdivision in Yakima. And that's their retirement. They were able to buy this beautiful new home that you would never think there was anything but stick built. And the cool thing is, we all have this like dream of buying land and having all of our family and friends like living on this land together. Well, they were essentially able to do that with their best friends being able to purchase in the same neighborhood, and they're living out their retirements together. So I just think it's really cool how far it has come, and their homes are gorgeous. Um, and I think it just shows that, technology and how things have changed. So I just wanted to share that little story to show you another reason why I'm so passionate about all of this.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks so much, Sarah. Again, I'm Troy Thiel. My wife Karen and I are at Keller Williams East Side, and we have been very active in the appropriate development and housing space throughout my entire career, and even before I got into real estate. So excited about getting started. If I were to title today's, give it a subtitle, everything old is new again. I grew up in the Midwest. When we would visit my dad's family farm, we would see the farmhouse, and then we saw 2 manufactured homes and accessory dwelling units. There was an extended family. My dad's aunt and uncles, they lived, there were 6 families living on one site, and the first 10 acres were essentially gardening for their own needs, which, in poor Southern Illinois, that was affordable housing and affordable living for them. And then, of course, as I started my real estate in the Chicago market, and then we moved to Madison, Wisconsin, prefab modular is in a higher percentage out in that market than we see it here. And so very familiar with it. We tried to buy a Lustron home once, which is, if you were looking up cool prefab housing, look up Lustron someday. The story of Lustron's pretty cool. But Wausau Homes, Wick Homes in Chicago, Sears and Roebuck, 100+ years ago, you could order a house that we delivered from the train by horse and buggy, and then it would be put in place in your house. And now some of those homes that many of them still stand, they're national landmarks. They're classic Chicago style bungalows. And we want to make sure we get a variable option of housing affordability for home ownership. And prefab modular and manufactured housing are some of those answers. So I'll get to the questions here. The goal of today is to discuss kind of the whole combination of quality and efficiency and flexibility and functionality and the different types that are available with these types of construction that we're talking about, and then get to some of the pain points. We asked all the presenters today to have some stories about what's working, and then also what are some of the pain points, and what are the things we can do here within Washington State legislatively to help create more affordable and appropriate housing. So let's get started. I'm gonna pick on the rookie. I'm pointing at you, Bruce Thompson, rookie to the Northwest and the West Coast lifestyle. Bruce, I'll let you introduce your company and your affiliation. Bruce has recently created a whole company out here on the West Coast, and Bruce, like me and Audrey on the panel, is a fellow Midwesterner, and so we're going to take over eventually. We need more of us to move out here, but Bruce, with Urbaneer and now Champion Homes and Skyline, what do why are you in the space of prefab modular? What do you see as exciting about being out on the West Coast, and why? And what do you see that's working?
Yeah, well, thank you, Troy, and thanks everybody for having me. My wife and co-founder Brenda is not here with me today, but she's my partner in crime and the designer in Urbaneer. And just a little bit more of the backstory. It's really, our own experience of downsizing about 5 or 6 years ago and looking around for solutions. We had built a large custom home and decided that wasn't what we wanted anymore. It didn't fit our lifestyle. We looked around and we realized it's very hard. Our focus at Urbaneer is compact housing, and we make housing live larger. We can take a space like 500 square feet and make it live like 800, which is a little bit of magic. But we just realized, Troy and everybody, that there's just not enough kind of missing middle housing, because that was kind of the term that I had to learn. I'm kind of new to housing in the last 10 years. My background is the tech industry, but when you really look at that missing middle, and I realize it's different for every market, but in West Michigan, what that means is looking for homes at like 300,000 to 400,000. It's all relative, right? That's not a West Coast type thing. But what we realized is that if we could figure it out here, which we did, we built our own compact home. Now we site built the home, but we quickly learned through our partnership with Skyline Champion what was possible with manufactured homes. And I think, Troy, I'm just going to go a little bit longer on my explanation here, but I think what we realized is, and this is one of the barriers that's out there. There's such a stigma with manufactured homes. And it really surprises me because often, more times than not, it's higher quality. And I always tell the story, if you called the car dealership and said, hey, I want the latest model car, and they brought it over and they put it together in your driveway, and it was a crew that had never put it together before, they had never seen that model, and there'd be parts left over, and things might be crooked, and you'd say, good job, and it costs more, right? So I think what we've learned with manufactured housing and modular is that you can get consistency, you can plan, and you can take some of the unpredictability out. I think that's one of the biggest challenges with housing is it's so unpredictable. And the timelines, and again, the availability of trades right now, and all kinds of things. So as we launched in Michigan and kind of proved out the model, as Troy said, we came to the West Coast, and we've actually just built our first unit in Woodland, California. It's a 510 square foot accessory dwelling unit, ADU, and it's now in Silicon Valley, and it's headed to somebody's backyard. And I think it's really exciting to see how the West Coast has really embraced accessory dwelling units as one of the key parts of the puzzle pieces for the housing crisis. I always say there's not one solution, certainly not. It's very complicated. But the accessory dwelling unit and building those offsite and modular is certainly a way to get towards the predictability, more attainable. I like that word sometimes, even versus affordability. And I think we need to, the last thing I'll say is just really focus though on quality and that experience. We think about the occupant, and when we think about smaller units, we really want to focus on that occupant experience so that we can achieve density with dignity is something that we talk a lot about. It's not just putting somebody in this very small space, it's putting them in a space that's healthy, that does have some flexibility, and is a location that's accessible to jobs and transportation, which is obviously a key part of the solution.
Yeah, very, very cool. Bruce, in your experience with Champion, was there a reason why California was picked as the first place to get to market with your agreement?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually both coasts. We're now in Washington, D.C. as well. I think number one, just hands down the demand, right? Mm-hmm. Living in West Michigan here, we're fortunate sometimes that you can get to affordability in different ways through just driving a little further, right? And not having being commute burden. But, as you look at the coast, and specifically, California and the Pacific Northwest, the pressures are just, enormous. If you look at the Bay Area, they have a goal of 435,000, I think it is, new homes by 2025. Mm-hmm. There's a shortage of something like 3.5 million in the state by that time. So, number one, the housing pressure. Number two, with our partnership, there's a very good facility in Woodland, California. It's 90 minutes, I believe, proximity to the Bay Area near Sacramento. And they produce a very good product. And, looking then at the zoning would be the third thing, Troy. Statewide zoning, it's the only region in the country that has statewide zoning for accessory dwelling units, which really removes a lot of the, when you look at housing, it's all about friction, right? We have to take the friction out of the whole process. And California's done a lot to remove that. So, and then the fourth, I would say, and I'll land it here, is there's an acceptance of manufactured housing as part of the solution. And you don't have some of the roadblocks and barriers to being able to put a manufactured home into a location.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, thanks so much. And it's more than just accessory dwelling units that can be used. Your primary home, right? You're back home.
Absolutely. Yeah, we did where I'm sitting now. It's a compact infill home in a historic neighborhood. It's 800 square foot footprint home, and you're absolutely right. It's there's, I think, a wide range of applications, and I think what you're seeing right now, especially, is locations. We're in kind of the first suburb out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. Built in the late 1800s, a lot of empty lots. There's a lot of infill that can happen. But of course, we can talk more, the zoning is still prohibitive today. Mm-hmm. We can't build an accessory dwelling unit in Grand Rapids, Michigan without going and getting approval from the city, which really shuts a lot of people down. It's going to change, but it hasn't changed yet.
Yeah. Yeah, we're working on that in a lot of places here. Bruce, thanks so much. We'll get back to you. I also want to make space for the presenters, our crew that's presenting today, to ask questions of each other. If you hear something that Ben or Cindy or Casey or Bruce or Audrey want to say, I want to give you guys space to kind of interact as well. And so next up, I have Audrey as on my notes because Audrey, You with now you're associated now with Urbaneer, but you also have Modular Suresite out of the Denver market. And Audrey, folks, if you don't know it, she has a fantastic. Make sure you plug it and give the address. A webinar series or a Zoominar series or whatever we call them these days on issues like this. And I've attended several of them online, and they're amazing. Audrey, you have studied and interact with people. You're kind of that national connection with people that are providing this type of housing. What are you seeing that's working, trend lines, and how can we do it better here on the West Coast and especially Washington?
Well, the thing I think is really exciting is that we're actually having these discussions. In the last 3 years that I have developed my company as a general contractor, my whole concentration was on prefab and manufactured homes. So I love that we're at least starting to consider doing something a little different. There's such a huge demand out there. There's such a labor shortage out there. We're really having, and we're struggling, right? We're trying to figure out these different areas of building. And I think it's so exciting that you have councilmen and you have all these state representatives and all these other individuals that really want to start having this conversation, because it starts there first. Especially with Bruce and what he was saying, it's not just the manufacturing house because everybody thinks it's one thing or another. It's really about how can we partner and start making some real solutions and getting building going back again. The reason why I started digging into modular construction is because, like Bruce said, it is amazing the amount of homes that we can produce. It's amazing the amount of jobs that we can create in an environment where people actually are happy to go to work. It's very difficult and challenging in the traditional building market where you're outside and you're building and you're dealing with all these outside extreme forces right now, right? And material costs are increasing, and then we're having all these other issues. So it's nice to see there is a solution. We just need to start figuring out how we can make it happen. And so when I look at national partners and I look at national trends, we're all having these conversations. The interesting thing that's really happening, and Bruce can contend to this, and this is why I joined his team, is that we're looking not only for a solution in our backyard, but all throughout the country. We all have the same scenarios that are going on, and we're trying to achieve this great success of getting people into homes, right? And getting in people into homes because we all have this expectation about how we want to live too. We don't want to live in a place that's falling apart. We don't want to live in areas that are diminished. We want to have things that build community, that create a stable environment for our children, that help with mental health. I mean, there's so many things that are attached to a home, and that's what we're trying to achieve right now. That's why it's so great we're having this discussion. And density, yes. ADUs, granny flats, anything that we can get on a property where then that property owner may have additional income, but they're also feeding the first-time home buyer, or they're feeding somebody else that can start having these opportunities to have a place to live. And so I think that's the greater gift of what we're really trying to achieve. It's about helping each other. It's about getting these obtainable options out there. It's about dipping our toe and being like maybe the first company that's saying, we know we need affordable housing. How do we do it? Let's just start making it happen. We need to stop having these discussions about how we're going to do it and the circle of conversation, and be action driven. Make things happen.
Yeah, very good. One of the many cool webinars that Audrey has hosted, I think of Horizon North with Reese. That's a group out of Calgary, but they work in the States. And they have done projects in the city of Vancouver, British Columbia, of multifamily projects for homelessness. It's a great option and a fiscal option. And I was super excited. And if you remember to go to join the Community for Affordable Housing Facebook page, because we're constantly conversing and presenting things. The city of Seattle just announced that some of their projects for homelessness and housing first people will be a prefab modular project or two. It was unclear, but I look forward to hearing more. The other thing you mentioned when we talk about accessory dwelling units or detached accessory dwelling units, these could be options. I mean, has anyone mentioned the COVID word yet? Am I the first? I didn't know if I'd be the first, but two of us are working from home, and a lot of us are working from home. This is accessory dwelling unit could also be an accessory commercial or an office unit. It could be where our home gym is. It could be where our boomerang kids are coming back and living. It could be where our in-laws hang out at a longer. It could be an additional income for rent or a short-term rental. So I know, everyone thinks when they hear the word, not everyone, but a lot of folks are concerned when they hear the word affordable, that means it's a government program. I mean, affordability here in King County in July of 2020, in the middle of a global pandemic, our average single family home price was almost $900,000 of what sold. That's affordable for the top X percent. It's a single digit. The rest of us kind of need action opportunities too. So the reality is our cost prices are spreading out throughout the state. So this is a statewide issue of fixing the housing, because people who can't afford here move to Sarah and hang out in Tacoma with Sarah, or they may want to move out to Anacortes or wherever. And these prices are driving up these local markets throughout the state and creating some housing affordability challenges. So we think prefab modular at CFAH, we think prefab modular manufactured housing is a great answer. One of the follow-ups, a follow-up question I have with you, Audrey, is where are you seeing out on the West Coast or on the western half of the states, where are you seeing prefab modular stick and starting to get really put in the ground in high numbers?
Well, the thing I think is interesting, along with the factories and the discussion of factories, there's a lot of solutions for affordable housing with creating modules that can be in a parking lot and feed people, like for hospitalization or for homeless and mental illness. And then those models can be actually taken from those parking lots and they can specifically be put in a region. So we have to think about the temporary solution that we can start creating as well. Because I don't know what it's like on the West Coast, but in Denver in particular, and that's where we're at, we have tent communities in so many places right now. And when I look at that, there are solutions that are already created. There are companies, there are factories. With our off-site construction series that we do every 2 weeks, it's really great because we're having these integrated partners that are making these solutions. And there's huge growth. Like Bruce was saying, I was in California 2 weeks ago. I couldn't even believe about the manufacturing and all the housing that needs to be either replaced or redone or reused into a more livable place, right? We have to start looking at livability. So I see factories like Indie Dwell. They're a mission-based company. They're based here, or actually they're in Idaho. They also have a factory in Pueblo. They are all modular based. You're looking at a lot of these high-rise. I think the biggest area that I'm seeing an impact in, not only in Bruce's space of the ADU, but is also multifamily, creating micro apartments, stacking them up. You can stack 180 units in 2 weeks with modular. Yes, there's areas that has to be done at the back end and the stitch work and all of the finish work, but you're talking about an express amount of time that you can get buildings going in such a quick period. And so when you look at that and being able to turn these projects over and having teams on them that actually understand the process, it makes affordability, it makes people being able to get into homes a nicer and faster process. And we're seeing huge amounts of building in California and trying to get up to the state, because we are all trying to create and fulfill this demand.
Yeah, and then we've seen some prefab modular homes that are amazing, exquisite quality. I want to move to Ben. Ben is Ben Roach with Palm Harbor, right, Ben?
That is correct. I'm down here in Millersburg, Oregon.
Yeah.
I'm right now in our building facility here.
Yeah, and Ben is an amazing expert at all of this, and he's worked out in this market, and he's worked with several other groups. So maybe Ben, too, I'll stop talking. You can talk about who else you've worked with in this space and kind of the projects. I'd love to hear your success stories, because the second round of questions, we're going to get to those pain points we talked about. Ben, what in your experience, where have you worked, and then what's working right now in the space?
So my history, I started in the factory-built housing industry in the early 1990s. I was a short order cook in the restaurant business, and my boss wanted me to work both the breakfast, the lunch, and the dinner shift. So I decided I didn't like that shift. I wanted to work Monday through Friday and have my weekends off. So I started working in a factory building roofs for a company called Redmond Homes in Silverton, Oregon. At the time, during the 1990s, we were at a real growth pattern in manufactured housing. A lot of manufactured home communities had come on board. A lot of cities embraced affordable housing in rental, lease land, manufactured home communities, specifically in the Portland metro area. And so at that time, there were 12 manufactured home manufacturers in Oregon and Washington. And we were producing at the factory that I was working at, we were actually producing 3 homes every day or 15 homes every week in a facility. So it was a high rate of production, a volume production system. And I was pretty amazed coming on board, having no construction experience, how quickly we could on the job train workers to build under a process controlled environment, affordable homes, well under market cost, and afford them, build them in a dry environment with dry lumber, something that was just amazing to me. So I immediately was hooked on the idea and had the opportunity after working in production for about 3 years, starting working in the sales and marketing area, training and selling on feature and benefit of why factory built homes are better built, why they're better energy efficiency and built into them, and so on. Our company expanded into modular and prefab during the early part of 2000. We were awarded a contract with Lincoln Properties, who is a privatized company who does military housing, and they had the contract to replace housing at Joint Base Fort Lewis McChord up in Washington. So our company produced over 100 living units for Fort Lewis and produced multi-story, multi-family structures at that plant in Silverton, Oregon. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, that company was shuttered and during the recession. So I did have an opportunity to work for a couple of other builders, and before I ended up here at Palm Harbor Homes. So I've worked in the Northern California market, mm-hmm. and I've worked in Idaho, in the Western Idaho region, and but like I said, I've settled down here with Palm Harbor Homes. This facility builds affordable homes that get delivered from far-reaching places as far as Juneau, Alaska, and down to Fresno Valley. We have delivered a few units down to Los Angeles, California, but that's very rare. But we particularly service the I-5 corridor out of our building facility that's currently capable of producing about 600 homes per year.
Okay, great. And so in your experience, the trend lines, are you seeing any areas that are adopting, is California and Oregon and Idaho and Washington, which states are handling zoning or land use legislation around this product type best?
Well, fortunately, the West Coast has got the benefit of having very progressive and helpful zoning laws throughout those 3 states. Mm-hmm. Forgive me, I don't know the bill name by heart, but in Washington State, for example, they have a fair housing law that allows any single family zoned property must, allow manufactured homes as a housing choice if the consumer wants to go that route, with exception of maybe some pre-existing CCNRs that might exist in certain neighborhoods. So you can have equivalency, like energy equivalency requirements, so that the homes are as energy efficient as site-built homes, but you have the opportunity to put manufactured homes on single-family homes both in Oregon and Washington and in California as well. So that's why you see a large number of manufacturers in the West Coast, and a good percentage of new family home starts in the West Coast are in fact manufactured homes.
Okay, great. I'm going to move. We'll come back around on our pain points. We're going to spend a little more time on them and some suggestions. Casey Porter is next up, and Casey's the finance guy, right? I don't
That's
know
right.
They like to be called that. Casey's with Caliber Home Loans, and he is an expert in this area, and I found him amazing to talk to, and of the depth of understanding he has of these issues. Casey, what is working? Because I like to be positive first. What is working in the prefab, modular, and/or manufactured housing loan packages? I mean, what are you finding is trend lines where there's good stuff occurring?
Yeah, I'd say from a financing standpoint, that when it comes to financing these manufactured homes, the good thing is that there is loan options available that does allow for a lower barrier of entry, for lower down payments. There's even some zero down options available out there. Mm-hmm. And so as far as affordability goes, when you're looking at the prefab manufactured home market, those price points in real estate tend to be a little bit lower, as you know, Troy. Mm-hmm. But that's nice to have that you have those lower down payment options as well. So that's what's working.
And we're seeing, I did, there are, within the Seattle metro area, there are some subdivisions that will sell. There's one up in Bothell that sells a lot of units. It's just east of the 405 and north of 522. And there's, those units, I'm seeing them selling the 375 to 500 range now.
Yep.
Which is national average of housing is 280 or 290, somewhere in there for a single family. So, affordability is relative. I think Bruce said that as well. What are you finding? Because Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac stepped into this space recently, right? In the HUD and cross mod homes. Can you explain that a little more?
Yeah, actually, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, I've been doing mortgage lending for 17 years. And they've always actually offered loan options for manufactured housing. Mm-hmm. So I think the programs that you're kind of pointing to, Troy, are the Manufactured Home Advantage program that Fannie Mae has offered. And really what that is all about, kind of from a lending standpoint, is if you're in an area that doesn't have a lot of manufactured homes, mm-hmm. when you're trying to purchase a manufactured home and you need some comparable properties for the appraised value, it allows you to use single family homes for that purpose. I do business in an area of Washington. I'm in Whatcom-Skagit County, where we have a lot of manufactured housing here. And so we don't really have a problem with that. But the issue that you have with some of those programs that have come out recently with Fannie Mae, the Manufactured Home Advantage, is that there's really no, including the company that I work for, Caliber Home Loans, we really don't offer a program for that. And none of and I've checked with our major competitors and they don't offer it either. Mm-hmm. And so really, even though it's a product that Fannie Mae has offered, that can help with the manufactured home market, there's just not a lot of lenders picking that up.
Yeah. So, and Cindy and I talked about this. Cindy is up next. We talked about this yesterday. How can we have some groups step up? How can Washington State help get some lenders into that space?
Well, I think it's more, to be honest with you, I think it's more of a national lending issue. Mm-hmm. Lending as an industry takes a little while to catch up. All of you, like Ben, Bruce, Audrey, all of you that have spoken, I mean, you guys are leading this industry and have some really good solutions. But you're on the cutting edge of it, and lending is a little bit behind. Mm-hmm. Being able to basically work with those options a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. They're still stuck in some of the old ways of how we've always looked at manufactured housing. And so really I kind of look at it as more of a national issue from a lending perspective with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. More of it is an state issue. There are definitely state regulations that do block financing being easier on manufactured homes, but from just offering the financing perspective, it's really more of a national issue.
What is there any differentiation between manufactured? Because we've covered a lot about manufactured today, but the prefab modular world, the SIP housing or panelized construction.
Yeah, so that's great that you bring that up, Troy. So there's a lot of people use manufactured housing and modular housing as one and the same, and they're interchangeable. In the lending world, they are entirely not. Mm-hmm. So modular housing, where you have several pieces built in a factory, you pour a foundation, you put the house on it. The lending industry will look at that as a regular single family home. Mm-hmm. And so you're getting regular single family interest rates. It's all being underwritten on a single family home. Now, when you have a manufactured house that's, brought in, 2 to 3 pieces and has what's called housing and urban development, so HUD tag numbers attached to it, that's where all of a sudden things change a little bit as far as like requirements for down payment, credit worthiness, interest rates tend to be just a tad bit higher on those. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the differentiation. But modular, yeah, they look at that as single family.
Okay. Yeah.
Can I just interject really quick,
yeah.
Troy, too? Because
Sure.
I think this is the big misconception that people, even when I got into it, I wasn't really understanding. So exactly what Casey is speaking about is how is the product built, right? So when you're building a HUD product, it is built differently than a modular product. Modular products are built under the same IRC or International Residential Code of that area's municipality and their building codes. Mm-hmm. Why is that important? It's important because Your modular home, like Casey was saying, has site work. It's attached to a foundation. There are building regulations and conformities of how that house has to be designed, built, and inspected. That same house will have an appraisal value of the same value of a traditional built house, as long as they have the most similar ways and things that are in both of those homes.
Mhm.
So there is a huge difference. And I think Casey brought up a really fabulous point in knowing what are you purchasing and how does the relationship to the lending work with that home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the consumer's got to be able to afford it. And Casey, you and I didn't discuss this. I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we'll get to Cindy next. The accessory dwelling unit we've mentioned multiple times, or a detached accessory dwelling unit. What about the financing for a conventional, someone who's a single family homeowner and they want to answer a challenge, whether or not they need that home office / guest space or the home gym / guest space? How is that? Is there any adjustments being made or thoughts, changes happening because of COVID to help consumers be able to add to their housing availability or their household availability?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not. Again, like I said, the lending industry as a whole nationally is just hard to catch up. So when it comes to someone who maybe has a current single family dwelling and then they want to put a manufactured home on there as an accessory dwelling, that really complicates the lending process. And really where that market space is going, if you want to sell or if you want to finance a property that has that setup, a lot of people are really going through what's called portfolio loans. They're not able to go through the normal routes of lending, like conventional loans through Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, government loan products. They really have to go through tailored bank products where the bank determines if they want to take that risk on and they keep it in-house.
Okay.
That's where, if you have a situation like that, that's where that's going to go.
Yeah. Thanks, Casey. Cindy, you're up. It's always great to have you. You're such a fantastic advocate for housing options and affordability throughout the state. What is your take? We always have this challenge because in Olympia, you all can only do so much, and here we are in the epicenter of a pretty bad crisis. But by the time you all get together, hopefully in person, if everything's safe, in January for the next session, and Patty, and thank you so much for being here, and your colleagues. Where is the issue of housing affordability going to be in the legislature, and this being the first year of the biennial? Can we get some policy moving on it?
Hi everyone, Cindy Reeves, State Rep representing the northwest corner of King County, which includes a tiny bit of Seattle and then 5 other suburban cities going into Snohomish County. So definitely open, I think, especially because we see the urgency of needing those supply that we've always needed, but even more urgent because of COVID-19. And with social distancing and so on, and the homeless, them living in tents and in congregate settings is not an option at this point. It's not safe for them. And so I think we are quite open. Obviously, it'll be a very busy and intense session because we will have also revenue issues that we have to deal with. But I think especially if we approach any policy recommendations from the point of view of addressing homelessness, farm worker housing, because that we had infections in the breadbasket of Washington State in Eastern Washington because of the housing situation or congregate housing situations. And so, especially with the Black Lives Matter, I think if we also look at things or propose policies based on disproportionate impacts of COVID-19 and everything else that has been happening this year and previous years, then I think we'll be much more receptive. And this is actually the perfect time to start working on it. Staff are supposed to have August off. They do not. But we as legislators, we kind of know who's coming back and who's not. And so we are already gathering bill ideas. And so for me, definitely looking for ways to bring down costs, getting the housing in the ground faster. Obviously, the realities of local government wanting to have a lot of say in the site permitting and inspecting even modular prefab panelized items projects as site build or stick build, that's been a problem, but I think we can work through that. So definitely looking for ideas to remove some of the barriers. I do have some questions of Casey.
Yeah, please do.
May I ask now? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Privilege of being a panelist, right? So between the prefab modular and the manufactured homes, what are the price point differences, or maybe even stick built, right? The three different categories, price point differences, and what are the durability differences from the point of the lenders?
From the lending standpoint, I think locally we find that the price point of manufactured homes tends to be a little bit lower than single family. How much lower? I can't say. It's hard to say. I mean, it depends on the property, how much land it comes with, and things like that. From a durability perspective, we want to make sure, and we look at this from an appraisal perspective. When you have a single family and a manufactured home, we want to know what the economic remaining life is of a property. And so we don't really run into issues with manufactured homes from a lending perspective on like how much economic life is left on the property. Never really becomes a problem. But I guess to your question, we don't run into a lot of barriers when it comes to, there's no difference between manufactured homes and single family when it comes to condition. It's all kind of judged the same.
I'd like to add in, if I could, specifically to the price point. And I'd invite anyone in this meeting here today to come to Oregon, come to our factory, where there's 24 models on display. And you can see the homes on display. And in Oregon, at least delivered within 100 miles of our building facility here, the homes on display all average about $75 a square foot. That's the cost from your foundation up to the shingled roof, okay? The price in our local market, again in Oregon, I can't speak for King County, but I can speak for Lynn County. To have a similar comparable home built, it's going to cost about $140 to $150 a square foot. And we're hearing builders having price inflation due to current lumber shortages as much as $10 a square foot in inflation. Mm-hmm. So there's a significant lower cost of entry level in a factory built home compared to a site built home. Now I can only speak to the home's house from the foundation up. The cost of the foundation can be very dramatically different based on the soil conditions and the property types, whether you're building it on a basement or putting it on some cinder block stacked up above grade. So that's where a lot of the price difference and the confusion in the consumer level comes in, is how much is the finished cost to move into the home. I heard Troy talking about affordability, and that market at $900,000 average price blew my mind. Because we're here in Albany here, we're closer to the $300,000 range. So 3 times higher is pretty astounding. But in Lacey, Washington, we have an affordable leased land community where they live almost much like a condo lifestyle. And those homes for 1,600 to 1,700 square feet with attached garages are selling in the high 2s and low 300s. And these are brand new homes with ceramic tile showers, solid surface countertops, and really nice appointed, well amenitied houses with fiber cement siding that has a warranty for 50 years. So that's the durability and affordability that we recognize in the manufactured housing segment.
Yeah, great stuff, Ben. I really appreciate it. If you haven't been looking in the chats, there's a lot of a great post. Ben posted a link to the Freddie Mac who does the Choice Home Loans. There. A lot of great comments. I see Greg Howes. He's with a group in Oregon that is working in this space as well. Janice mentions that Japan is erecting a house in a day, prefab including cabinetry and 2 stories. You know, how are we going to get there? So at this point, maybe we should talk, if we have a panelist, or any of the pain points you mentioned to me in our conversations before we presented today, are there any pain points we haven't gotten to, or solutions or legislative solutions that you would suggest Washington looks at that we know we kind of need to talk about?
Well, I'll volunteer to dovetail into what I think it was that Audrey was talking about the differences between manufactured homes and modular or prefab homes. And there's a very significant difference when you're talking about the state of Oregon and Washington. And as Troy mentioned earlier, on the East Coast, modular, or what you would consider state building code or local building code factory built homes that are built in a factory, but they're built equivalent to the site built building code, are very common on the East Coast. And this is because the governments and those in charge of jurisdictional issues have not stepped in on the micro and forced factories to comply with all of their local down to the city jurisdictions. And I can use a case example. We, at one time back in 2013, our company did build prefab modulars for the state of Washington, and we built homes, a couple of modular homes in West Seattle. And we had to actually go down to the city and get approval all the way down to the type of breakers in the breaker panel. Okay, that sort of micro plan approval, where the local building inspector wants to inspect every aspect of the construction, is things that we currently avoid at our factory. At the rate of production we're building, we just aren't going to take the time. So we abandoned building modular homes out of our building facility, and we no longer do them for Oregon or Washington for that very reason. So we're using a federal national building code, the HUD building code, to build our homes. And that universal building code allows us to build them safe and affordably for all 50 states. And because there's already state law that allows single family homes to be placed on residential properties, it's given us a much more affordable pathway to building homes. But where we're limited is the HUD building code has never been designed for multifamily, multi-story, or really high density condominium construction. So that's not going to change. You're just not going to get the federal HUD code to change. So those aren't solutions that we have control of in this panel. But what we can do is look at if local zoning is better, permits the single family housing that can help people in that housing ladder that we've been talking about. Because when you can put somebody out of an apartment and put them into a single family home in an affordable community, that presents an opening for that apartment for somebody coming up the housing ladder, the property ladder. When you can then vacate a rental room, somebody's renting a room or an ADU, so that they can move into that vacant apartment, you've now created an opening on the marketplace for somebody who now needs their first home, or maybe a homeless person who can now afford, you know, a rental unit that's on the much lowest part of that downward lower step in the property ladder. So even though we're talking about middle housing, it affects the entire property ladder. We always have to remember that.
Yeah, they're all connected. Casey, you were raising your hand when I mentioned it. Are there any pain points we haven't talked about?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to circle back around on something that Ben had said. You know, Cindy was asking about cost versus single family. So I come at it more from it's currently established for sale kind of a situation. Ben's absolutely right. As far as cost goes for installing a manufactured home, it's way lower than building a single family home. The issue that we run into on the lending side is the barrier of entry to do that, because a lot more money is required on those kind of construction loans for manufactured homes. And so a lot of people who are looking at a manufactured home, they want something with low or no down. Most of the clients who are in that segment, right? And so to be able to you know, buy a piece of land, put a home from a factory, even though the cost is totally there, the value is entirely there. It's just a lot more money up front for people. And that's, again, where the lending industry needs to have a few more options for those kind of folks. And so moving on from that and talking about specifically state issues that we run into on the lending side, Troy, you and I talked the other day about what we run into is that a lot of people, I'd say about 95% of people who own manufactured homes in the state of Washington don't know that if you do anything to a manufactured home, you have to get a permit through labor and industries. They think, well, I just need to get a building permit to, do something from the county, and the county will do it, and they'll do it according to their regulations. But you actually have to get it from labor and industries. And so when I have clients who want to purchase a home, we've run into issues where the current owner re-roofed the house, and that's a modification to a manufactured home. I had to have a labor and industries inspector go out there, and I had to dig up the literature on from the actual manufacturer of the shingles to determine if it met the requirements of the snow load for the manufactured home. And it caused problems with financing. And so, Troy, you and I talked a little bit about how, if you have a single family home, you don't have to get a permit to re-roof your house, right? But if you have a manufactured home, you do. And if you don't, then it causes issues if you want to sell or do something with your financing, And so those are some things with the state that make it particularly difficult to do. And the thing with lending is, with those kind of modifications, is a lot of the current mortgage guidelines we have actually default to the states to determine the guidance on financing that and those kind of things. And so I think that's where maybe we can make some headway from a state level.
Yeah. Any other panelists have we missed any of our pain points or some fixes that we'd suggest? If someone could speak to third-party inspections, that might be helpful. If
So,
that's an issue.
Again, I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but we've had quite a bit of experience in this in our facility. The third-party inspection process for modular, if we were to go back and entertain doing modular construction at our plant, it would require currently for us to then displace all of our current hourly people on our assembly line that are assemblers. They're factory workers, they're assemblers, they assemble the homes on an assembly line. We'd have to displace them with licensed trade carpenters, electricians, plumbers, and the like, because of the way there's a tri-state agreement where Idaho, Washington, and Oregon have agreed in a reciprocity of inspection policy. So essentially, if we're building a home for Washington State, Oregon mandates that the people building the home are building it under Oregon statutes for trade and licensure. So we found that that's just something we can't do. We can't displace workers that are building homes that don't require that under manufactured homes and replace them with other workers just to build a few modular state building code homes. So if there was a magic wand that I could wave, I would say that if somebody wanted to do multi-story or multi-family in the state of Washington, would be to get that tri-state agreement amended to no longer require that licensure. So we can actually just use a third-party inspection agency to do our plant inspections, but use our existing assembly line workers that work on our assembly line every day to do that work in the homes. The homes are all inspected. The homes we build for Alaska that are built to modular building code conform to the Alaska building home code. The homes we build for Montana conform to the Montana building code, and the ones we build for California, a state that is ripe with regulation, they allow a third-party inspector, and they do not require that they be Oregon licensed electricians or plumbers when they're assembling things like electrical and plumbing systems. So we're able to actually export our homes to California, Alaska, and Montana, but I can't build a modular home in my plant because of that tri-state agreement.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else have any comments from the panel?
Just a follow-up question, Ben, on the
Yes.
tri-state agreement. Are your factory workers overseen by, the standards, I guess, the licensed trade folks versus the factory line workers? Is there oversight or standards or anything else that I guess makes the quality no less?
So I'll explain that as quickly as I can. It's a very complex question. But in the simplest form, we have a 3-level inspection process internally. Everything's done through a documented process control because we're in an assembly line. So the first line worker is responsible to do his job right. A supervisor then inspects his work and checks off specific life safety items that are throughout the process. And that's then inspected by that departmental supervisor. We have an internal second-party inspection, which is our quality assurance team. Our quality assurance inspectors go through and make sure we're following our processes. They also spot check the work to make sure nobody's completed work and signed it off when it wasn't done properly. But to oversee the whole thing, we refer to, as Troy mentioned, a third-party inspection agency, that is a licensed, certified building inspector, licensed in the necessary codes where the home is going to ship, that comes in and oversees our oversight. And they're open to come in at any time during our construction process and inspect any part of our production process at any time. So unlike a site-built home where the builder would call up and say, hey, I'm ready for my electrical inspection, come check me out, we're open all the time while we're operating. And so our inspector just comes in and does his inspections throughout the facility and makes sure we're all following our procedures. And he's the one that signs off on that. In addition, just like a site-built home, in a modular home, we'll have a full set of professionally engineered stamped prints and drawings. And what that third-party inspector is ensuring we're following those drawings and certifying that they've been built to the design. So it's not just in-house. That third party is an outside stamp and certified engineered stamp. That's how the process works in the modular construction to make sure we're meeting that state building code. It's actually much like the way we do for the HUD building code. It's just the difference being that in the HUD building code, we're not required to have a engineered set of stamped plans. And that's a whole other subject I could talk about another time.
Yeah, and can I step in real quickly as well? This is what's so fascinating about modular, just exactly what Ben said. There are so many rules and regulations that are getting checked and rechecked. And when I used to work for a custom home builder, and they would call in inspections, and I love all the custom home builders, all the people that are building out there in the industry. I'm just saying, hyper focus on what we're currently talking about with modular prefab. There are so many sets of regulations and rules that they follow daily, and they do happily, and they keep producing these homes and having these inspectors come out. And it is a process, but that's what I think it is so it's like so amazing to me that we have, like, what I think the modular industry is maybe, let's just say 10% of the entire building industry. And yet we're seeing great progress in it. We're seeing everything that needs to be checked off on these line items of every kind of inspection and safety and building codes. And yet we still cannot get enough of the government officials to understand how we can change this to simplify it. So I guess that's just like, I think, Ben, you're making such a good point that there are so many regulations, so many things that are done in these factories that they have to abide by at every single point of the day, because somebody can come in and they still do it with a smile on their face, getting the boxes out there, building these houses, and we still can't get the needle to move a little faster.
Yeah.
Can I have another question? Okay, so let's flip the question. For instance, because in Washington State, we definitely want built in Washington. Sorry for Oregon and Idaho, but we want built in Washington. So if we were to have this particular change in policy, we probably would have to have a trade-off, right? Like guaranteeing or even having a manufacturing plant in Washington State. Is that feasible, or is that too much to ask for?
Well, I'll answer that in the fact that we did at one time, the industry, when I say we, had 2 or 3, I think there still is one up in Goldendale, I think, maybe it's not Goldendale, I'm sorry, Valley Quality Homes is a company in Washington State. We had a few factories, but what we found when the industry shrunk, first it shrunk a little bit in late 1999, 1998, and then again in 2008 during the housing recession. Many of the factories found it was more advantageous to be better centralized and invest in infrastructure to expand capacities at a larger factory and ship to a greater geographic range. So that's why we have their plants are mostly in Oregon, because we can ship to California, Idaho, Washington in 3 directions. Rather than if a plant in Washington would be a little bit more limited, they have to ship south and they wouldn't be able to capture the Northern California market as competitively as those of us in Oregon. So that's really the economic reason why you're seeing the most of these factories that are in Oregon. But you are correct. There needs to be a give and take. And I also always mention that even though factory built homes may seem like we take business away from traditional builders, traditionally builders would always build their own cabinets, or they'd hire a cabinet craftsman, or they would build their own window frames, or they'd build their own roof trusses. Today, builders, they can't find the labor, so they hire the truss company to build the trusses. They hire a cabinet company to build the cabinets and the window company to build the windows. We're just taking it another step further. we really need builders to install our homes on certified Washington foundations. We're not going to build garages and factories. Some plants do, so I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but they're kind of an empty box. The four walls and the roof are pretty affordable to build on site. They don't have appliances and bathrooms and tile work and carpeting and things like that. So garages still need to be built on site. Carports, garages, flat work. So there's still construction jobs when we're building homes for other states. We're just, again, just putting the home together in a very large, we have a 170,000 square foot building facility here, employing 180 workers 5 days a week.
And we do have factories within Washington. Katera, you know, is in the space, but I would try to have someone from them on the next call. You know, we haven't gotten we've been wrapping for an hour, and I knew we'd be going a little long. I should get to some chat questions from the attendees. What Sarah, I think we're going to go a little long if that's okay, and we think that we might have to have a follow-up Zoom. If we want to talk about that, because in the chat, if you haven't seen it, hopefully we can save that. I think you can create a file with the chat. A lot of attendees and some of our panelists have posted links to important connections, whether it's about financing or other examples. Greg Howes showed some great examples on a prefab setup. So check that out in the chat. Are there any questions in the chat, Sarah, that you've seen that we should ask? Are you monitoring the chat?
No, just really good. Like Allah, I'm hoping that I'm not saying your name incorrectly, has joined a Slack discussion group for this. So if everyone gets a chance to click on that, you can follow that for later. Kim Mulligan just asked, what about flat pack green homes? I hear a major builder is getting into this space.
Does any of our panelists know about the flat pack green homes? I'm not familiar with those either. I've not heard that term. Any of the attendees? I don't know how. If we want to take everybody off of mute and just try to be good, or if you have an answer, take yourself off of mute if that's possible. Can they?
Hey, Troy.
Yes.
I was on another call. What was the name of the flat pack company? Did they give a name?
Kim
No.
Okay, so flat pack, and I'm sure Ben knows this too. Flat pack is basically stacking the panelized, right, and delivering it. It's typically done for sites that are inaccessible, and you can use crane or such to assist with the assemblies. It's really hard to do a large scale flat pack unless you are a true panelized company. There's smaller flat packs that are really crafty, and they kind of almost are pre-assembled and then they lift back together. Mm-hmm. But for complex homes or custom homes, it's not applicable.
Yeah, and Kim did mention that DR Horton was the group potentially, Mark, that is looking into it. Why are you laughing?
Well, I mean, they've all been around. DR Horton's DR Horton, and they do a great job on scale. They do a superb job of managing code and delivering what their client is looking for. So I think what they're really saying is it's predominantly panelized. I can research it further, Troy, now that I know it's DR Horton, but I think it's predominantly panelized.
Oh, cool. Thanks,
yeah,
Mark.
I think DR Horton is a production home builder. That's their basis. Right. So I would imagine that there are, just like Oakwood Homes in Colorado, there's particular parts of the house that are panelized, but it is traditionally built on site. So it's a traditional build with access panels or things exactly what Mark was talking about. I don't know if it's a whole house that's, come out there and do it.
And we have seen some examples of prefab, modular, and panelized in hotel development here in the Seattle market. In Kirkland, the Kirkland Avenue townhomes in Renton, it was part of the Renton Housing Authority's development. They did a whole project on Kirkland Avenue using prefab modular SIP about 6 years ago. It's called the Kirkland Avenue townhomes. See if there's any other questions. Cindy, you have a question?
Could you estimate what the percentage of on-site builder work is needed by
local builders and for modular projects.
Okay, so Ben and Audrey, Cindy's asking you a question. Could you estimate what the percentage of on-site builder work is needed by local builders even for modular projects? For instance, even when nonprofits are building affordable housing, the majority of the work are performed by private builders.
So with modular, you need a general contractor. You
Mhm.
can't complete a project. So it's, I mean, you need a general contractor to finish the foundation, the excavation, tying in all the laterals, like Ben was saying, doing a garage on site. You're also going to need all the trades to tie in all of the utilities. So you'll still need a plumber, electrician, HVAC guy, you know, any other things that are attached to the site that is needing completed work. You still need an entire team. It's just less amount of the work that has to be done inside the home. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So it's, I would say it's almost 100% that you still need all these other trades. There's just less people on site and less specific things that need to be completed for that house. For example, when we finished a 1-box modular, which is basically 880 square feet, 1 bedroom on this particular design, 1 bath, we had it on a crawl space foundation. It took us 5.5 months to get the permit in Denver County after it was placed on the foundation, because all modular pretty much has to be picked up and placed on a foundation. It took us 12 working days to finish that house.
Wow.
Wow.
You'll typically find that manufactured housing, because of the way the HUD code works, is going to be a more complete product. We have to have all systems tested, a functional heating system in the home. We have to have all our electrical systems tested, plumbing fixtures tested with pressure, and drain systems tested to flood level. So in a HUD code home, all the toilets, fixtures, and all those things are in place. We finish our homes with ceramic tile showers and bathrooms as they leave the factory. On site, they're typically just doing finished floor coverings like laying carpet or laminate plank flooring. So the home itself is much more complete than on many modulars, but people oftentimes go to modular because they don't want a fully complete home. They want to have more selection and variety of choices that maybe the factory doesn't offer. We don't offer all the same features and finishes that you can find at Home Depot, for example. We have about 5 different kitchen sink choices where you could go on to Houzz or Amazon and find 5,000 different sinks. So we limit choice and selection so that we can offer the homes at a more affordable and rapid build process.
Cool.
So I have a question. We have Timberland Homes that's out here off Highway 167. Is that a modular? Because I know they build them and then they crane them in and put them on site.
Yeah.
Is that modular? Okay.
Is it a whole box that's finished, or are you seeing panels being placed together?
No, they're pieces, like big chunks of it that are placed together with the crane, but they're just dropped in and then done.
So I think that might be more panelized, because when a modular comes, or a manufactured house, and sometimes in manufactured you don't actually need a crane, but in modular, just because of the pure weight of the box, I mean, you're talking anywhere from 20 to 35,000 pounds of weight. It has to be lifted and placed and then attached to that foundation. But just be clear, a modular and a manufactured home, everything in that particular module or that box is finished. Flooring, cabinets, lighting, everything that you can possibly need in the house is done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Timberland, yeah.
And Mark responds that grading/concrete and permits, sewer, water, and electric are all coordinated by the general contractor, not the modular builder. And that's what you do with Modular SureSite, right?
That's correct. And,
Yeah.
and that's the difference. And I think that's what's so great about, you know, Ben being on this discussion too, because he has the different view of what their lane is and what modular does. And so the great thing is there's a conformity of people still working together in building, right? We're not taking away the builder or the general contractor. Most builders own their company with a general contracting license. That makes sense. When you buy modular homes, you can buy them from a retailer. That retailer has to be licensed with the state. They have to, well, in particular in Colorado, they have to have a surety bond. There's a whole bunch of regulations. Not everybody can just come up and be a retailer of a modular factory. But once that modular is sold, you have to have somebody be able to, you have to have a setting crane company. It has to be installed. And then you have to have a general contractor to do all of the work to actually have that house be finished.
Great stuff. Does anyone else have any questions? Any of, I'm looking here, there's a new message.
While you're looking there, Troy, I did want to add in, we didn't talk much about energy efficiency.
Okay. Yeah.
But, you know, today's day and age where we're starting to see things like rolling blackouts in the state of California again, a number of power plants are going down the Pacific Northwest over the next 5 years without really a good, reliable replacement really currently on board yet. We can build homes that use considerably less energy when we're building factory-built homes. The factory-built process makes them tighter in construction. The ability to utilize new technologies and new housing. We build homes with heat pump water heaters, ductless heat pump heating systems, low flow faucets to conserve water as well. I think we've mentioned in talking points too, there's the NEEM Plus energy certification that we're doing, which is exceeding Washington's current energy code right now. So our homes actually are more innovative oftentimes in the Northwest than keeping up, in fact, exceeding those state-built building codes, because energy efficiency is in our DNA for us that build in factories.
Great. And not only is it about energy efficiency, but it's also an environmental issue, right? There's less waste in the construction,
Significantly lower waste.
Yeah.
We recently this year restarted again our recycling program for even gypsum drywall. So we're not throwing that into a landfill. It's getting recycled. So eliminating the amount, and there's the utilization of the material. More material gets put into the building. With the rising costs of building materials, Orient strand board is something that we keep very precious. We find ways to even reuse the material that gets cut out of the window openings. If anybody was on a job site and see the amount of landfill that's generated from site-built construction, you'd be shocked.
And on top of that is the environmental disruption of the build site, the neighborhood around a conventional stick-built home. I live on Market Street in Kirkland, and I have 4 flat tires to attribute to construction projects on my bicycles. So, you know, we're coming kind of near to the end of the time frame of that we said we could go. I want to see if there's any other questions that we have time to get to, and then I want to ask one final question of the panelist and of Cindy and any of the state, any of our other electeds here, is next steps. You know, how can we, as you know, I'm a housing industry realtor guy, and there's lenders here and there's builders here. How can we help State Representative Ryu and State Senator Cooterer and State Rep Wicks? How can we help them between now and the end of next session get to some legislation to help make this more possible for more of our community?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so very much. I learned a lot.
Yeah.
I think language or terminology matters. So the difference between modular and manufactured, you know, who knew, right? Blows my mind. So I think what works the best is if even competitors or diverse people coming from different positions come, what we call the double door, right? They come together to the legislature and say, yeah, we're competitors, but what will help us on both sides, both the supplier and, you know, the various, is for you to be unified in, we disagree on everything else, but on this particular issue, we all agree. Lowering the cost of housing, number one. So if there are really good ways, we won't have money to give any tax incentives or anything like that. But I am definitely looking at regulatory barriers that might be lowered without sacrificing quality or equity. And so I think that kind of unified front and agreeing on particular specific issues goes a long ways.
Anyone else have any comments?
Go get them, Cindy. You can make it happen.
Yeah.
We're in full support, and I'm so happy that you gave us this time, and your input and your support is really what's going to make it happen. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we're going to defrag from this and figure out some next steps. Again, if you can save the group chat, it looks like you can create a file.
Yeah.
And do that. And then make sure to do that because there's some great links, and there's a recommendation from Mala to join a conversation group about this, right? In there, Sarah? And maybe, I don't know if we can, do you have the email list for everybody? Maybe we can follow up and send that as an attachment.
Yes.
Oh, cool. Sarah, any comments from you before we sign off?
I just really want to thank everyone again. You know, like I said, having this many people show up to a discussion about this shows that there is a lot of interest in it. And it makes us all feel good that hopefully we can get some change made. So thank you very much for your time. I know everybody's time is extremely valuable, especially to our state representatives and all of our building experts. So I just want to say thank you, and please again remind you to join our Facebook group, which is a Community for Affordable Housing. We will be putting up updates, different links to different events, and of course a call to action for all of you is if you have events or information you'd like to share, please send them to us because we'd like to help share, to spread the word as well to all of our industry professional friends as well. So thank you very much, and I will get this recording and the notes downloaded for you.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody. You guys rock. Have a great day, and thanks for caring. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
John.
Bye.
Everybody.